Look at this ghetto trash trying to scam her way into first class. Officer Jake Morrison grabbed the boarding pass from the black woman's manicured hands, waving it in the air like evidence. Fake ticket, stolen credit card, probably welfare fraud too. Judge Diana Washington's jaw tightened as Morrison shoved her against the check-in counter. Her Harvard law ring caught the terminal lights as her hands pressed against the cold marble. "You're going to strip search this one," Morrison barked to his female colleague, loud enough for the entire gate area to hear. "Check every pocket. These people hide cash everywhere." Passengers pulled out phones. A business traveler started live streaming. A college student hit a record on TikTok. What none of them knew was that the ghetto trash Morrison was humiliating had sent more criminals to federal prison than anyone in Georgia. What Morrison didn't know was that his career would be over in exactly 43 minutes. The handcuffs came out, the cameras rolled, and America was about to watch justice get arrested. 4 hours earlier, Judge Diana Washington had kissed her husband Robert goodbye in the driveway of their suburban Atlanta home. Their 16-year-old daughter Sarah was already at school, and 14-year-old Michael was finishing breakfast. "Safe travels, love," Robert had said, straightening her navy blazer. "Change the world today." Diana smiled. After 20 years on the federal bench, she still felt the weight of that responsibility. Today's judicial conference in Washington would determine civil rights policy for the next decade. Her voice mattered. The drive to Hartsfield-Jackson took 35 minutes through morning traffic. Diana reviewed case files on her tablet, preparing for the conference discussions. The Richmond decision precedent could reshape discrimination law if the federal judges voted correctly. Her phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. 47 new connection requests since her ruling 2 weeks ago. The Delta Airlines case had made national headlines. $12 million in damages for systematic discrimination against black passengers. The airline industry was furious. Diana parked in the executive lot and walked through the sliding glass doors at 5:45 a.m. The terminal hummed with early business travelers. Coffee shops were opening. Gate agents prepared for the morning rush. At the Delta check-in counter, Agent Sarah Carter smiled professionally. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'd like to confirm my seat assignment for Flight 1247 to Reagan National," Diana said, handing over her identification and printed boarding pass. Chen's fingers moved across her keyboard. Her smile faltered slightly. A red flag appeared on her screen. "Manual review required. Contact supervisor." "I'm sorry, there seems to be a system issue with your reservation. Let me call my supervisor." Diana checked her watch. Plenty of time before her 8:30 departure. "Of course, take your time." Chen stepped away, speaking quietly into her radio. Across the terminal, TSA Supervisor Jake Morrison was finishing his morning briefing with 3 officers. His computer screen showed an alert. "Enhanced screening protocol. Target Washington Diana." Morrison had received the call at 6:05 a.m. from a restricted number. The voice was professional, corporate. "The Washington reservation needs special attention. Handle it quietly, but make sure she understands the consequences of activist rulings." $5,000 had appeared in Morrison's personal account the night before. His divorce was expensive. His credit cards were maxed out. The money solved problems. Morrison gathered officers Rodriguez, Martinez, and Johnson. "We have a situation developing at Gate A7. Possible fraud case. I want everything recorded for evidence." The officers adjusted their body cameras. Security cameras were repositioned for optimal angles. Everything needed to look routine, procedural, justified. Chen returned to the counter where Diana waited patiently, scrolling through emails on her phone. The judicial conference agenda was packed. Morning sessions on sentencing guidelines. Afternoon discussions on corporate accountability measures. "Ma'am, my supervisor needs to speak with you about your reservation," Carter said, her voice slightly strained. Diana looked up from her phone. "Is there a problem with my booking?" "He'll explain everything." Morrison approached from across the terminal, his radio crackling with coordinated chatter. He had studied the file. Federal judge. Recent ruling against Delta. Perfect target for a lesson in consequences. Other passengers began to notice the convergence of personnel. A business traveler looked up from his laptop. A college student paused her TikTok scrolling. An elderly teacher finished her coffee and watched. Morrison's hand moved to his handcuffs as he closed the distance. The morning rush was building. More witnesses meant better footage. Better footage meant clearer message. What Morrison didn't realize was that Judge Diana Washington had spent 2 decades studying exactly this kind of civil rights violation. She knew the law better than he knew his own badge number. The confrontation was about to begin. TSA Supervisor Jake Morrison strutted toward the Delta counter like he owned the airport. His boots echoed against the polished floor as passengers instinctively moved out of his way. Behind him, 3 officers followed in formation. "Ma'am, step away from the counter," Morrison commanded, his voice carrying across the gate area. "We need to discuss your fraudulent reservation." Judge Diana Washington looked up calmly from her phone. "I'm sorry, fraudulent?" Morrison slapped her printed boarding pass onto the marble counter. "This ticket was purchased with a stolen credit card. Our fraud detection system flagged it immediately." "Officer, there must be some mistake." Diana's voice remained measured, professional. "I purchased this ticket yesterday with my personal American Express card. I can show you my banking app right now." "Anyone can fake a banking app," Morrison sneered, stepping closer. "What I want to know is how you got the money for first class in the first place." The question hung in the air like a slap. Nearby passengers began to slow their walking, sensing drama. A business traveler pulled out his phone. A college student started recording. "Excuse me?" Diana's composure wavered slightly. Morrison smiled. He had found the pressure point. "Simple question, lady. What's your job? How do you afford a $1,500 plane ticket?" "I don't see how my employment is relevant to my travel." "It's relevant when we're investigating credit card fraud." Morrison gestured to his officers. "Rodriguez Johnson, I want you to secure the area." "This woman is about to become non-compliant." More passengers stopped walking. Phones came out. A live stream started with 3 viewers that quickly jumped to dozens. Diana reached into her briefcase. "Officer, I have all my documentation right here. Credit card statements, confirmation emails, everything you need to verify." "Don't reach for anything," Morrison barked, his hand moving to his weapon. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The elderly teacher, Martha Williams, gasped audibly. The business traveler held his phone higher. Tyler Johnson adjusted his angle for better TikTok footage. "Officer, I'm simply trying to provide the documentation you requested," Diana said, her hands now visible and empty. Morrison moved behind her, blocking her path to the gate. "You know what I think? I think you're running some kind of welfare scam. Food stamps during the week, first-class flights on the weekend." The words hit like physical blows. Diana's breath caught. Around them, passengers shifted uncomfortably. The racial profiling was becoming impossible to ignore. "That's completely inappropriate," Diana said firmly. "I demand to speak with your supervisor." "I am the supervisor, sweetheart." Morrison pulled out his handcuffs, the metal catching the terminal lights. "And you're about to learn what happens when you try to defraud American Airlines." Agent Sarah Carter watched from behind the counter, her face pale. This wasn't standard procedure. This was something else entirely. Morrison grabbed Diana's wrist. "You have the right to remain silent, which is probably the smartest thing someone like you could do." The handcuffs came out. The crowd grew larger. 15 phones were now recording from different angles. What Morrison couldn't see was the Harvard Law class ring on Diana's finger, or the federal judicial ID in her briefcase, or the 20 years of courtroom experience that was about to turn him into a defendant. Morrison's radio crackled as backup arrived. Officers Rodriguez, Martinez, and Johnson formed a semicircle around Judge Diana Washington, trapping her against the Delta counter. The morning rush slowed to a crawl as passengers rubbernecked the unfolding drama. "Ma'am, turn around and place your hands behind your back," Morrison commanded, his voice echoing through the terminal. "You're under arrest for credit card fraud and attempted theft of services." Diana remained perfectly still, her judicial training kicking in despite the humiliation. "Officer Morrison, under what specific federal statute are you detaining me? I'm not aware of any law requiring income verification for domestic air travel." Morrison's face flushed red. Nobody questioned his authority, especially not some uppity woman trying to fly above her station. "Don't you dare try to lawyer me, lady. I've been doing this job longer than you've been alive." The crowd pressed closer. Business traveler James Liu started live streaming to his Instagram followers. "Y'all seeing this? TSA is about to arrest this professional woman for absolutely nothing. Martha Williams, a retired teacher from Birmingham, held her iPhone steady as she recorded. "This is exactly what they did to us in the 60s, she muttered to the camera. College student Tyler Johnson adjusted his TikTok angle, whispering commentary. "This is straight racial profiling happening live at Atlanta Airport. Already got 3,000 viewers watching." Morrison grabbed Diana's arm roughly, his fingers digging into her blazer. "I said turn around, now!" Diana's voice cut through the noise with razor precision. "Officer, you are currently violating my Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure. You have no probable cause, no warrant, and no articulable suspicion of criminal activity." The legal terminology caught Morrison off guard. Most people he hassled didn't know constitutional law. "How do you know about probable cause?" "I know many things, Officer Morrison, including federal law regarding civil rights violations under color of authority." Officer Martinez shifted uncomfortably, whispering to his colleague Johnson. "Jake's going way too far with this one." Morrison ignored his subordinate's concern. The money in his account said finish the job, make it public, make it humiliating, send the message. "Rodriguez, search her bags," Morrison barked. "These people always hide cash and drugs." Officer Rodriguez hesitated. "Supervisor, don't we need consent for a search? We have reasonable suspicion of fraud. Search the damn bags." Diana's briefcase was dumped onto the counter. Federal court documents spilled across the marble surface. Harvard Law alumni directory. Prescription medications with her name clearly printed. Family photos of her children. "Look at this," Morrison said loudly, holding up her court documents. "Fake government papers, too. This woman's running a whole identity theft operation." The crowd gasped. Martha Williams stepped closer with her phone. "Those look like real court documents to me." "Ma'am, step back," Morrison snapped at Martha. "This is official police business." Tyler Johnson's TikTok was exploding with comments. "This is insane. She's clearly legitimate. Sue them all. This is why I hate flying while black." Morrison grabbed Diana's wrists, forcing them behind her back. The handcuffs bit into her skin as he ratcheted them tight. "You have the right to remain silent, which is probably the smartest thing someone like you has ever done." Diana's voice remained steady despite the pain. "Officer Morrison, badge number 4471, I am formally notifying you that you are committing assault under federal law. These actions are being recorded by multiple witnesses." "Shut up," Morrison hissed in her ear. "You think because you can pronounce big words you're better than everyone else? You're nothing but a welfare queen playing dress-up." The slur hit like a physical blow. Around them, passengers recoiled. Several began shouting protests. "This is wrong," called out a businessman. "Let her go," Martha Williams demanded. James Liu's live stream had jumped to over 1,000 viewers, comments flooding in faster than he could read them. Morrison shoved Diana forward, parading her past the growing crowd like a trophy. "This is what happens when you try to defraud American businesses. We don't care how fancy you dress or how many big words you know." Diana stumbled, but kept her dignity intact. 20 years of serving justice had prepared her for many things, but not for this moment when the system she had devoted her life to turned against her. "Move along, people," Morrison shouted to the crowd. "Show's over." But the show was just beginning. The videos were uploaded. The hashtags were forming, and somewhere in the crowd, Diana's phone was automatically backing up to the cloud, preserving everything for posterity. The handcuffs clicked shut with finality as Morrison tightened them around Diana's wrists. The cold metal bit into her skin, but her voice remained steady as steel. "Officer Morrison, badge number 4471, you have just handcuffed Federal District Judge Diana Washington of the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia." Morrison froze mid-motion. The words hung in the terminal air like a bomb waiting to explode. "You're what now?" Morrison's voice cracked slightly. Diana turned to face him directly, her judicial authority cutting through the chaos. "I am a sitting federal judge. I have presided over 3,247 cases. I have sentenced 156 people to federal prison. 2 weeks ago, I ruled against Delta Airlines in a $12 million discrimination lawsuit." The crowd erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. Tyler Johnson's TikTok exploded with comments flooding faster than the screen could display them. Did she just say federal judge? Martha Williams whispered loudly to her phone camera. They just arrested a federal judge! Morrison's hands began shaking visibly. The color drained from his face as the magnitude of his mistake crashed down on him. We were just following protocol. Protocol? Diana's voice cut like a courtroom gavel. Officer Morrison, there is no protocol for arresting federal judges based on fraudulent allegations. This was purchased in retaliation. Business traveler James Liu's Instagram live stream jumped to over 2,000 viewers. Oh my God, he whispered into his phone. This TSA supervisor just arrested a federal judge. This is about to be the biggest lawsuit in history. Officer Martinez stepped back from Morrison like he was radioactive. Jake, what the hell did you just do? The other officers exchanged panicked glances. Rodriguez reached for his radio to call the shift supervisor. Johnson started backing away from the scene entirely. Diana continued with ice-cold precision, speaking directly to the cameras she knew were recording. Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing what happens when corporate money attempts to purchase judicial intimidation. Officer Morrison was paid to humiliate me because I ruled against Delta Airlines. Morrison's radio fell from his trembling fingers, clattering against the terminal floor. How much trouble am I in? He whispered to no one in particular. Diana looked directly at him, her judicial authority fully unleashed despite the handcuffs. Officer Morrison, in my 20 years on the federal bench, I have seen many defendants. You just became one of them. The crowd pressed closer, phones held high, everyone wanting to capture this historic moment of justice confronting corruption. Martha Williams turned to her camera with tears in her eyes. Y'all, I lived through the civil rights movement, and I'm watching it happen again right here. A federal judge arrested for flying while black in 2025. Tyler Johnson's TikTok had gone viral in real time. Guys, this video already has 50,000 views and it's only been 5 minutes. This TSA supervisor just ended his entire career on camera. Supervisor Brooks came running across the terminal, her radio buzzing with urgent calls from headquarters. The videos were already uploaded. The news alerts were already pinging phones across America. Diana remained perfectly composed even in handcuffs, her voice carrying the weight of 2 decades serving justice. This arrest was not random. This was targeted retaliation, and I intend to prove it. Morrison stared at her in absolute terror, realizing he had just committed multiple federal crimes against one of the most powerful people in the American legal system. The revolution was already beginning. Within 45 minutes of Tyler Johnson uploading his TikTok video, the world exploded. The footage of federal judge Diana Washington being handcuffed spread across social media like wildfire, igniting conversations from Atlanta to Amsterdam. Tyler's original video hit 100,000 views in the first hour. Martha Williams's Instagram recording reached 50,000 shares. James Liu's live stream had been clipped and reposted across Twitter, where the hashtag #JudgeWashington climbed to number 3, trending nationally. The comments were brutal and immediate. This is why we can't trust the system. Federal judge treated like a criminal for flying while black. Everyone sharing this needs to vote in local elections. At Delta headquarters in downtown Atlanta, the crisis management team assembled in an emergency session. Communications Director Sarah Mitchell stared at her laptop screen in horror as the view counts climbed exponentially. We need a statement immediately, CEO Michael Roberts barked into his phone. And get me our legal team, now. The first corporate response came at 7:23 a.m., posted across all Delta platforms. Delta Airlines takes all customer service concerns seriously. We are investigating this incident involving our security partners and will respond appropriately. The public reaction was swift and merciless. 47,000 quote tweets called it corporate speak bullshit. The hashtag boycott Delta began trending alongside Judge Washington. Delta's stock price dropped 2.3% in pre-market trading. At TSA regional headquarters, Director Patricia Reeves was fielding angry calls from Washington while watching her agency's reputation collapse in real time. Her press statement came at 7:45 a.m. The Transportation Security Administration is conducting a full review of this morning's incident. All personnel involved have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Behind the scenes, the panic was absolute. Morrison, Brooks, and 3 other officers were suspended immediately. Department-wide sensitivity training was scheduled. Internal Affairs opened an investigation. Legal counsel was engaged. Meanwhile, Judge Washington sat in the Airport Admirals Club, surrounded by a growing team of advisors. Her husband, Robert, had caught the first available flight from Augusta. Civil rights attorney Maria Santos was driving from downtown Atlanta. Communications specialist David Kim was already drafting statements. At 8:30 a.m., Judge Washington issued her first public response. This incident represents a systemic problem in American law enforcement and corporate accountability. While I will pursue all appropriate legal remedies, my greater concern is for the countless Americans who face similar discrimination without the privilege of my position or platform. The legal community's response was immediate and unified. The Federal Judges Association issued a rare public statement. An attack on one member of the federal judiciary is an attack on the independence of our entire justice system. We stand with Judge Washington and demand full accountability. News networks scrambled to cover the developing story. CNN's breaking news banner read, "Federal judge arrested at airport in alleged racial profiling case." Fox News countered with, "Activist judge claims discrimination after airport security incident." MSNBC declared it a civil rights crisis. The polarization was immediate and predictable. Liberal accounts shared the video with outrage, justice system failing its own. Conservative accounts questioned the narrative, judge playing victim card. But the legal community was unanimous in its condemnation. Harvard Law School, Judge Washington's alma mater, issued a statement within 2 hours. "We stand with our distinguished alumna, Judge Washington. This apparent violation of civil rights demands full investigation and accountability." The American Bar Association called an emergency board meeting. The NAACP issued a statement demanding federal intervention. Legal organizations across the country began coordinating responses, but the most damaging evidence was yet to come. Investigative journalist Sarah Carter of the Atlanta Constitution had been monitoring police scanners when the incident broke. She was already pulling phone records, interviewing witnesses, and following the money trail. At 2 p.m., Carter published her first bombshell. TSA Supervisor Morrison had received a mysterious phone call at 6:05 a.m., just minutes before the incident. The call came from a number registered to Pinnacle Strategic Communications, a corporate consulting firm specializing in reputation management. Chen's article revealed that Judge Washington's ticket was completely legitimate, verified by Delta's own IT department. Morrison had 6 prior discrimination complaints in his file. The fraud alert in the airline system had been manually triggered by someone with administrative access. Most explosive of all, Morrison had deposited $5,000 in cash into his personal account the night before the incident. The story was no longer about an airport arrest. It was about corruption, retaliation, and a massive conspiracy to intimidate federal judges. By 6 p.m., the evening news led with the story nationwide. Judge Washington wasn't just a victim anymore. She was the catalyst for exposing something much bigger and more dangerous to American democracy. 24 hours after the arrest, investigative journalist Sarah Carter sat in her downtown Atlanta office surrounded by documents, phone records, and 3 computer monitors displaying the biggest story of her career. The evidence was staggering, and it painted a picture of corruption that reached far beyond one racist TSA supervisor. The phone records were the smoking gun. Morrison's call at 6:05 a.m. came from 404-555-7821, a number registered to Pinnacle Strategic Communications. Carter's source at the phone company had provided the full transcript of that 4-minute, 17-second conversation. "Yeah, Morrison here," the recording began. "You want me to do what to whom?" The voice on the other end was professional, corporate, and cold. "Judge Diana Washington. Flight 1247 to Reagan National. Make it public, make it humiliating. She needs to understand what happens when judges rule against our clients." "She's a judge? Shit, that's different money." "It's $50,000 different. 25 now, 25 after. Consider it a consulting fee for airport security services." Chen listened to the recording 3 times, transcribing every word. Morrison had sold his badge for money, but someone much more powerful had written the check. Digital forensics expert Marcus Thompson, a former FBI cybercrime specialist, had traced the money trail through 3 shell companies. Pinnacle Strategic Communications was the tip of an iceberg that included Airport Safety Solutions, LLC, Executive Consulting Group, and Strategic Risk Management. This wasn't random harassment, Thompson explained to Carter over a secure phone. This was a coordinated operation with multiple fallback positions and plausible deniability built in at every level. The financial records told the complete story. 2 weeks after Judge Washington's ruling against Delta, the airline had paid Pinnacle Strategic a $250,000 consulting fee. Within 48 hours, money began flowing to Morrison's account and 4 other TSA employees at different airports. But the conspiracy was bigger than Delta. Carter's investigation had uncovered a pattern spanning 3 years and involving dozens of federal judges. Judge Robert Carter in California had been randomly detained for 6 hours at LAX after ruling against a pharmaceutical company. Judge Maria Rodriguez in Texas had faced a similar security incident at DFW following an environmental protection decision. The common thread was always the same: Pinnacle Strategic Communications and their network of corrupted airport personnel. Chen's breakthrough came when an encrypted email arrived from an anonymous source calling themselves Justice Leaks. The message contained 2,847 internal corporate emails, 156 hours of boardroom recordings, and offshore banking records showing $47 million in payments over 3 years. The most damaging email came directly from Pinnacle CEO William Sterling to Delta's board of directors. Delta leadership, our previous discussion regarding the Washington judicial overreach. We have developed a scalable solution that addresses the reputation management concern while maintaining legal distance. Timeline, 2 weeks. Investment, $250K. Outcome, problem becomes distracted from future airline adverse rulings. Recommend green light. The response from Delta's legal affairs director was equally damning. Proceed with discussed solution. Payment authorization through consulting contract amendment. Ensure no direct attribution. The board expects this issue to be resolved before the Q3 earnings call. Chen had found the paper trail connecting corporate boardrooms to airport detention cells. But the scope was even larger than she had imagined. The anonymous source provided evidence of Operation Judicial Accountability, a $47 million program designed to intimidate federal judges whose rulings affected corporate profits. The target list included 34 judges across 12 states. The participating corporations read like a Fortune 500 directory. 8 major airlines, 15 pharmaceutical companies, 23 defense contractors, 34 financial institutions. Judge Washington had been a test case. If they could humiliate a respected federal judge without consequences, they could intimidate the entire federal judiciary. The evidence also revealed the technological sophistication of the operation. Social media manipulation campaigns used 847,000 fake accounts to amplify negative narratives about targeted judges. Professional video editing teams stood ready to create viral content from airport incidents. Legal harassment teams coordinated sustained pressure campaigns lasting months. Chen's phone rang as she compiled the evidence. The caller ID showed private number. Miss Carter, this is TSA Officer Martinez. I was there during the Washington arrest. I need to meet with you immediately. Officer Martinez arrived at Carter's office an hour later, looking over his shoulder nervously. He carried a small digital recorder and a manila folder thick with documents. They're threatening my family now, Martinez said without preamble. Someone followed my daughter home from school yesterday, left a note on my car saying I should reconsider my testimony to the FBI. Martinez played his recording device. Morrison's voice filled the office. The judge bitch thinks she's untouchable because she wears a robe. Sterling says we need to teach all these activist judges what happens when they cost corporations money. This is just the beginning. The folder contained evidence of similar operations at 12 other airports. Lists of 34 targeted judges. Financial records showing payments to 67 TSA employees nationwide. Instructions for maximizing viral potential of harassment videos. Miss Carter, Martinez said quietly, they're not just targeting Judge Washington. They're trying to buy the entire justice system, and if we don't stop them now, they'll succeed. Chen looked at the mountain of evidence spreading across her desk. Phone recordings, financial documents, corporate emails, witness testimony. enough to bring down a conspiracy that threatened the independence of American democracy. Her deadline was in 6 hours. By morning, America would know that justice itself was for sale. 72 hours after Sarah Carter's explosive expose hit the front page of every major newspaper, Judge Diana Washington's world became a war zone. The corporate forces she had exposed were fighting back with everything they had, and her family was paying the price. Diana stood in her kitchen at 6:47 a.m., staring out the window at 47 news vans lined up along Maple Street like an occupying army. Her neighbors' perfectly manicured lawns were destroyed by satellite trucks and camera equipment. The morning joggers who usually passed by were replaced by reporters shouting questions at anyone who emerged from the house. Her phone displayed 234 documented death threats that had arrived overnight. The FBI had classified 12 as credible and specific. Federal marshals now escorted her children to school in armored vehicles, a reality that made Diana's stomach turn every morning. The doorbell rang insistently. Diana peered through the peephole to see a delivery driver holding a large bouquet of flowers. She didn't open the door. Yesterday's flower delivery had contained a note reading, "Activist judges get what they deserve," along with a photo of her children walking to school. The phone rang. Principal Margaret Foster's voice was strained with worry. "Judge Washington, we've had to implement full lockdown procedures. Someone called in a bomb threat, specifically mentioning Sarah and Michael by name. We're arranging homeschooling temporarily for their safety." Diana closed her eyes, feeling the weight of what her pursuit of justice was costing her family. She had sent criminals to prison for 20 years, but she had never been the target of such coordinated harassment. Upstairs, 16-year-old Sarah Washington slammed her bedroom door after discovering that hackers had posted fake nude photos of her online. The images had been shared across social media with captions like, "Judge's daughter follows family tradition of criminal behavior." "Mom, I can't take this anymore." Sarah sobbed when Diana knocked on her door. "My friends are scared to talk to me. Their parents are telling them to stay away from our family." "Why did you have to make such a big deal about this stupid airport thing?" 14-year-old Michael came home an hour later with a black eye and torn shirt. 3 older boys had cornered him after lunch, calling his mother a race-baiting troublemaker who hates America and hates the police. "I tried to defend you, Mom," Michael said quietly, holding an ice pack to his swollen face. "But there were too many of them. And they said their parents told them you're trying to destroy the country." Diana's husband, Robert, arrived home early from his construction company with devastating news. 3 major clients had canceled contracts worth $200,000, citing reputation concerns. Their mortgage company had called to schedule a risk assessment review, despite 15 years of perfect payments. Their insurance company was re-evaluating their policies following a comprehensive threat analysis. "Diana, we're hemorrhaging money," Robert said as they sat at the kitchen table surrounded by bills and cancellation notices. "The legal fees alone are killing us. Delta's lawyers called again today. They're offering $2 million, all legal fees paid, public apology, everything forgiven if you agree to move forward without further litigation." Diana stared at the settlement offer on the table. $2 million would solve their financial problems immediately. It would make the threats stop. It would give her children their normal lives back. At 2:17 a.m., Diana sat alone in her home office, surrounded by evidence files and family photos from happier times. 20 years of building a legal career, fighting for justice, believing the system could work. Now her own children were targets because she had dared to challenge corporate power. She picked up her phone and scrolled to Delta's legal team contact. Her thumb hovered over the number. One phone call would end this nightmare. Her family could return to their peaceful suburban life. She could return to her quiet courtroom and never make waves again. The text message was already drafted. "I'm ready to discuss settlement terms." But before she could hit send, her phone rang with an unknown number. "Judge Washington? This is Officer Martinez from TSA. I know it's late, but I had to call you." "Officer Martinez? How did you get this number?" "Judge, they're threatening my family now, too. They found out I talked to the FBI. My daughter, someone followed her home from school today. They left a note saying I should reconsider my testimony." Diana's finger moved away from the send button. Martinez continued, his voice shaking. "Judge Washington, I have something else. Evidence I didn't give the FBI yet. Audio recordings of the entire conspiracy. Names of everyone involved. If I'm going down, I want to make sure it counts." Diana looked at the settlement text on her phone, then deleted it completely. "Officer Martinez, meet me at my lawyer's office in 2 hours, and bring everything you have." At 4:30 a.m., the FBI's Atlanta field office looked more like a military command center than a government building. Judge Diana Washington sat at a polished conference table surrounded by the alliance that would either save American democracy or go down fighting together. FBI Special Agent Patricia Reynolds spread the evidence across the table like a war map. Officer Martinez had delivered 48 minutes of audio recordings that would reshape the entire case. Digital forensics expert Marcus Thompson hunched over 3 laptops following money trails through offshore accounts. Civil rights attorney Maria Santos reviewed legal documents while investigative journalist Sarah Carter compiled the final pieces of the puzzle. "Ladies and gentlemen," Agent Reynolds began, "what we have here is the largest attack on judicial independence in American history. Officer Martinez's recordings prove this conspiracy reaches far beyond what we initially imagined." Martinez pressed play on his digital recorder. Morrison's voice filled the secure conference room, but this time the full conversation revealed the scope of Operation Judicial Accountability. "Yeah, I understand the Washington situation," Morrison's recorded voice said. "Make it public, make it humiliating, send a message to every federal judge in America. What's that? 34 judges on the target list? Jesus Christ, you people don't mess around." The voice on the other end belonged to William Sterling, Pinnacle Strategics CEO. "Morrison, this is about teaching the entire federal judiciary what happens when they rule against our clients. Judge Washington is just the test case. If we can humiliate a respected federal judge without consequences, we can control judicial decisions nationwide." Marcus Thompson looked up from his computer screens. "The financial evidence backs up everything in these recordings. Pinnacle Strategic received $47 million over 3 years from 127 participating corporations. Airlines, pharmaceutical companies, defense contractors, oil companies, financial institutions. They literally tried to purchase the federal judiciary." Sarah Carter had been working her sources throughout the night. "It gets worse," she announced. "I've confirmed similar operations at 12 other airports. Judge Robert Carter in California, Judge Maria Rodriguez in Texas, Judge Samuel Johnson in New York. All targeted within weeks of ruling against major corporations, all harassed at airports, all incidents recorded and designed to go viral." The pattern was unmistakable. Corporate America had declared war on judicial independence, and they had nearly won. Agent Reynolds' phone buzzed with an encrypted message. "We just got cooperation from an unexpected source," she announced. "An anonymous hacker collective calling themselves Justice Leaks has been monitoring this conspiracy for months. They're releasing additional evidence coordinated with our press conference." The new evidence was staggering. 2,847 internal corporate emails showing the conspiracy's coordination. Boardroom recordings from Fortune 500 companies discussing judicial pressure campaigns. Offshore banking records revealing $127 million in payments to harassment operations. Social media bot networks using 847,000 fake accounts to amplify negative narratives about targeted judges. But the most shocking revelation came from Judge Robert Carter, who joined the meeting via secure video conference from California. "They did the same thing to me at LAX after I ruled against PharmaCorp," Judge Carter testified. 6 hours of detention, public humiliation, viral videos questioning my integrity. I thought it was a coincidence until I saw Judge Washington's case. I have recordings too." One by one, other targeted judges came forward. Judge Rodriguez from Texas appeared on screen, followed by Judge Johnson from New York. Each had similar stories of airport harassment following corporate adverse rulings. Each had been too isolated to recognize the pattern. "We're not dealing with individual incidents," Agent Reynolds realized. "We're dealing with a coordinated attack on the entire federal judiciary." The evidence compilation was overwhelming. 847 pages of documents, 67 hours of audio recordings, 234 financial transaction records, 89 witness statements under oath, 156 corroborating digital communications. Maria Santos reviewed the legal framework. We can file RICO charges against the entire conspiracy, civil rights violations under federal statute. Judicial intimidation carries 20-year sentences. Interstate commerce violations. This is organized crime targeting the foundation of American democracy. Sarah Carter's phone buzzed with breaking news alerts. The coordinated evidence release was beginning. Major newspapers across the country were publishing simultaneous exposés. CNN's breaking news banner read, "Federal investigation reveals Judge Washington case part of multi-million-dollar corporate conspiracy." The New York Times headline screamed, "Corporate conspiracy to intimidate federal judges exposed." The Washington Post declared, $47 million plot to purchase judicial harassment revealed. Even the Wall Street Journal, typically corporate-friendly, ran the headline, "Business leaders demand justice for Judge Washington." But the most powerful moment came when Judge Washington received a call from her 16-year-old daughter, Sarah. "Mom, I saw the news. Everyone at school is talking about how brave you are. I'm sorry I doubted you. You're fighting for all of us, aren't you?" Judge Washington's voice caught with emotion. "Yes, sweetheart. For all of us." Agent Reynolds stood at the head of the table, surrounded by evidence that would reshape American corporate accountability. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have enough evidence to file RICO charges against 67 individuals and 23 corporations. Judge Washington, are you ready to take them down?" Judge Washington looked at the mountain of evidence, the faces of her allies, the proof that would protect judicial independence for generations. "Agent Reynolds, for 20 years I've served justice from behind the bench. Today, I served it from the witness stand. Let's end this conspiracy once and for all." The revolution was about to begin. At exactly 12 p.m., FBI agents across 12 states executed simultaneous arrest warrants in what would become known as the largest judicial intimidation conspiracy in American history. Federal courthouse steps in Atlanta became ground zero for a spontaneous uprising that spread across the nation within hours. Pinnacle Strategic CEO William Sterling was arrested at LaGuardia Airport in perfect poetic justice. As he approached the Delta first-class counter for his flight to a non-extradition country, FBI Special Agent Reynolds emerged with 15 agents. "William Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights and intimidation of federal judges," Agent Reynolds announced loudly for the cameras. Sterling spun around in panic, briefcase falling as documents scattered. "This is harassment! I have a plane to catch!" "The only place you're going is federal prison," Agent Reynolds replied. "And the irony? You're being arrested at an airport for conspiring to have Judge Washington arrested at an airport." Meanwhile, 12,000 people assembled spontaneously on the federal courthouse plaza in Atlanta. Legal professionals, civil rights activists, and ordinary citizens organized through social media created the largest demonstration for judicial independence in decades. Federal judges from 15 districts made unprecedented public appearances. Law students from 47 universities carried signs reading, "Justice is not for sale." International legal observers from 12 countries documented the historic moment. At 1 p.m., Judge Diana Washington took the podium to address the nation. The global live stream reached 4.7 million viewers across 23 countries. "4 days ago, I was arrested at an airport for flying while black and serving justice while independent," Judge Washington began. "Today, those who conspired to attack our democracy face justice themselves." The crowd erupted in sustained applause lasting 4 minutes. This victory belongs to every person who recorded, who shared, who spoke up, who refused to accept that American justice could be purchased by corporate interests. The hashtag #JusticeForJudges trended #1 worldwide. Oprah Winfrey posted to 47 million followers, "Judge Washington's courage reminds us that justice requires constant vigilance." Barack Obama tweeted to 132 million followers, "Judge Washington exemplifies the best of American public service, unwavering commitment to justice." The corporate reckoning was swift. Delta's stock collapsed 23% in 4 hours as Boycott Delta reached 12 million participants. Major law firms threatened corporate boycotts. Fortune 500 companies reviewed airline contracts. Coordinated demonstrations erupted nationwide. 8,000 protesters gathered at New York's federal courthouse. 6,000 marched in Los Angeles. 4,000 assembled in Chicago. 15,000 marched to the Supreme Court demanding judicial independence. The international impact was immediate. The UK Foreign Secretary stated, "The independence of the American federal judiciary is crucial to international cooperation. These allegations represent a threat to global confidence in American institutions." G7 justice ministers condemned corporate interference in judicial independence as violating fundamental democratic principles. As Judge Washington concluded her address, the crowd chanted, "Justice, justice, justice." The chant spread to demonstrations in 12 cities, creating a national chorus demanding accountability. The movement had found its voice and moment. Corporate America had awakened the American people's determination to protect democracy from being sold. 10 days after the arrests, the Hart Senate Office Building in Washington, D.C. buzzed with anticipation as senators prepared for the most watched congressional hearing in decades. The Senate Judiciary Committee's investigation into judicial independence would be broadcast live to 47 countries, with an estimated global audience of 23.7 million viewers. Committee Chairman Senator Patricia Williams gavelled the session to order as cameras captured every moment. The witness table told the story of American democracy under assault. Judge Diana Washington sat with quiet dignity, flanked by cooperating defendant William Sterling, FBI Director James Patterson, and a visibly nervous Delta Airlines CEO Michael Roberts. "Senators, members of Congress, fellow Americans," Judge Washington began, her voice carrying the weight of 20 years on the federal bench. 10 days ago, I was handcuffed at an airport for the crime of serving justice independently. Today, I testify not as a victim, but as a federal judge who has seen American democracy tested and proven resilient. The chamber fell silent as she continued. "The evidence will show that 127 corporations spent $47 million to intimidate federal judges. They believed justice could be purchased. They were wrong." Senator Williams turned to the man who had orchestrated the conspiracy. "Mr. Sterling, please tell the committee about Operation Judicial Accountability." William Sterling, pale and defeated in his orange jumpsuit, leaned toward the microphone. "Senator, Pinnacle Strategic was hired by a consortium of Fortune 500 companies to systematically intimidate federal judges whose rulings affected corporate profits. Judge Washington was targeted because her ruling cost our clients $847 million in discrimination settlements." Gasps echoed through the chamber as the scope of the conspiracy became clear. "Are you saying corporations conspired to attack sitting federal judges?" asked Ranking Member Senator Robert Carter. "Yes, sir. We had a 3-year contract worth $47 million to modify judicial behavior through strategic pressure campaigns." The real fireworks began when Senator Williams confronted Delta CEO Michael Roberts. "Mr. Roberts, let me read from an email you personally sent. The Washington problem needs permanent solution. Authorize maximum pressure. Did you write this?" Roberts, sweating visibly with his tie loosened, stammered, "Senator, that email was taken out of context. Mr. Roberts, yes or no, did you personally authorize payment to have a federal judge humiliated?" The pause stretched for 30 seconds as 23.7 million viewers waited. The company engaged consultants for—" "Answer the question," Senator Carter demanded, disgusted. "Did you pay to have Judge Washington arrested?" Roberts' voice broke completely. Yes, we paid for it." The Senate chamber exploded in shocked outrage as Roberts began crying on live television. Judge Washington leaned forward, her judicial authority cutting through the chaos. "Mr. Roberts, you didn't want my ruling overturned. You wanted me destroyed. The difference will cost you everything." FBI Director Patterson presented the evidence on large screens visible to cameras worldwide. Corporate conspiracy organizational charts, $47 million money flow diagrams, photographs of 34 targeted judges, timeline of 67 successful intimidation operations. This investigation revealed the largest attack on judicial independence in American history, Director Patterson testified. Without Judge Washington's courage, this conspiracy would have continued indefinitely. The legal consequences were announced in real time. Assistant Attorney General Sarah Martinez appeared via video link. Criminal charges filed against 67 individuals for conspiracy to violate civil rights. 23 corporations face RICO violations with maximum penalties. Sterling faces 15 years federal prison. Morrison and TSA conspirators face 5 to 10 years each. As Judge Washington prepared for her closing statement, the chamber fell completely silent. International cameras focused on her composed, powerful presence. Senators, what happened to me was not an isolated incident. It was a test of whether American democracy would allow justice itself to be sold to the highest bidder. Her voice rose with controlled passion. They chose the wrong judge to test, and America chose the right response. A standing ovation began with the committee and spread through the gallery, lasting 4 minutes and 23 seconds. This victory belongs to Officer Martinez, who chose courage over comfort, to Sarah Carter and journalists who chose truth over silence, to thousands of Americans who recorded, shared, and demanded justice. Judge Washington's final words would be quoted for generations. 4 days ago, I was arrested for flying while black. Today, those responsible sit in federal custody. Tomorrow, no judge will face what I faced. This is how democracy defends itself. The clip was shared 23 million times in the first hour. International news agencies broadcast it worldwide. Law schools assigned the speech as required viewing. American justice had been tested in the crucible of corporate corruption and emerged stronger than ever. 6 months later, Judge Diana Washington entered her federal courtroom with satisfaction she had never felt in 20 years on the bench. The same courthouse where she had served justice now hosted the final chapter of her historic battle. Morrison sat in orange prison garb, serving 8 years in federal prison. His wife had divorced him, taken the children, and left him with nothing. Fellow inmates knew his story as the cop who arrested a judge. His daily humiliation was complete. Delta CEO Michael Roberts received 12 years in federal prison. The airline's stock remained down 67%. Federal monitors would oversee operations for 5 years. Corporate reputation lay in ruins. William Sterling had fainted when Judge Washington sentenced him to 15 years and ordered Pinnacle Strategic dissolved. All assets were liquidated and distributed to judicial intimidation victims. The Judicial Independence Protection Act passed unanimously, establishing $100 million minimum penalties for corporate judicial intimidation. Enhanced whistleblower protections encouraged federal employees to report corruption. International cooperation agreements created global judicial independence standards. Judge Washington's family had survived and thrived. Sarah and Michael returned to school with enhanced confidence. Robert's construction business flourished with ethics-focused contracts. Maple Street was peaceful again. The cultural impact extended beyond courtrooms. The Washington case became required study in every law school. The documentary Justice Defended won the Academy Award. The children's book Judge Diana's Day became a bestseller. As Judge Washington concluded her case review, law clerk Jessica Miller approached with a new filing. Judge Washington Healthcare Corporation accused of intimidating judges in pharmaceutical cases. Judge Washington smiled, reaching for her gavel. Schedule the hearing, Jessica, and make sure the media knows judicial independence is no longer for sale in America. Her final video message reached 23 million views. If you've experienced discrimination, document it. If you witness injustice, record it. If corporations threaten democracy, expose them. One person standing up can change everything. Federal judicial harassment cases dropped 89% since reforms. Public trust in federal courts reached 30-year highs. Corporate compliance became absolute under federal enforcement. Judge Washington had proven that democracy, when threatened, could defend itself. Drop a comment sharing your own experiences with discrimination. Like and subscribe for more stories of justice prevailing over corruption. Hit the bell icon because next week we expose the pharmaceutical conspiracy Judge Washington is fighting now.